Hello everyone. Today let's review the first 5 namas of Lalita Sahasranamam. Shri Mata Shri Maharagni Srimad Simhasaneshwari Chitagnikunda Sambhuta Deva Karya Samudyata. Before we review the meaning of each nama, let's briefly review the specialities of Lalita Sahasranamam. Sahasranamam, as you all know, is 1,000 names. The speciality of Lalita Sahasranamam is that it has exactly 1,000 names and not a single name is repeated. It is said that it is the only Sahasranama in which there is no repetition of the names. So that's number one. And the second thing is, it is normal for Sahasranamas to be arranged in a certain rhythm, or it's called the meter, chandas. And the Lalita Sahasranamam is arranged in Anushtup Chandaha, which is 4 verses and each verse is 8 syllables. And if you look in the books, Lalita Sahasranamam will be arranged in 2 lines and a total of 183 lines. And if you look at each line, it has 2 halves, 8 syllables each. So that's what the 4 verses of 8 syllables each mean. Typically in Sahasranamams, it is common to use some fillers in order to make the namas fit within that meter so that it's easy to say it. In Lalita Sahasranamam, there is no use of fillers in order to make it fit into that meter. So it naturally, all the namas naturally fit into that meter. And the meter is very important, the rhythm is very important because it sets the pace at which we tell Lalita Sahasranamam. And it's very important to recite it at the right pace in order for us to get the benefit. And so many things as human beings, when we the repetition is easy for us to get used to, right? When we say things in the same pace, we are able to get better involved into it. The third thing about Lalita Sahasranamam is that it is full of secrets. And there are quite a few ways in which we could look at it. One is the namas themselves, the meanings keep revealing as you keep getting involved with it. And whatever meaning that I'm explaining to you all, know that there are many ways to interpret them, and they keep evolving as we get more involved. So that is one thing. So the namas can be looked at in many different ways, and they carry so much deep meaning with them that each time you look at it, you would read them differently. That's one thing. But it is also said that the Lalita Sahasranamam has bijaksharas that are embedded into the nama. Bijaksharam is called a seed mantra, and usually they are for a particular god. Think of the bijaksharam as a direct line to that god. So when you chant the bijaksharam over a period of time, then we get the blessings of that god. And Lalita Sahasranamam has taken mercy on all of us and has embedded all of these bijaksharams in these namas. They are inseparable with the namas. So when we are reciting the Lalita Sahasranamam, we are saying all these bijaksharams as well. And the other aspect of Lalita Sahasranamam is, when you read the end of Lalita Sahasranamam, it will say Lalita Rahasya Nama Sahasra Stotra Katanam. Means it's a secret, meaning Lalita Sahasranamam will be there. We'll all be aware that there is a shloka called Lalita Sahasranamam, but it comes into our life only when we are ready for it, and it comes at the blessing of Lalita directly. So in that, it can be an open secret and it can be out there, and unless we get her blessings, it doesn't come into our life. And so for any of us today who are listening to this, Lalita has blessed us all And that's why we are able to say this today. Okay, now on to the meaning of the shloka. If you notice the first line, Shri Mata, Shri Maharagni, Srimat Simhasaneshwari. As we are pronouncing for the first three names, Shreem, Shreem, Shreem. We are saying Shreem three times. It's a Bijakshara for Goddess Lakshmi. So the Shreem Bijakshara is embedded in the first three names, and therefore, as soon as we start Lalita Sahasranamam, we are inviting abundance and prosperity and well-being into our lives. So that's the first secret in the first shloka. So now let's take a look at the first nama, which is Shri Mata. So for clarity, the 5 namas are Shri Mata is nama number 1, Shri Maharagni is nama number 2, Srimat Simhasaneshwari is nama number 3, Chitagnikunda Sambhuta is nama number 4, and Devakarya Samudyata is nama number 5. So we'll take a look at nama number 1, Shri Mata. Mata means mother, and Shri Mata means auspicious mother. So the very first nama in Lalita Sahasranamam refers to Lalita as our mother. Lalita, just like a mother, has so much love and affection towards us. She cares for us and she bestows all her love on us and grace on us. The addition of the word Shri is very important to note. Anytime a word has Shri added to it, that means its greatness is emphasized. So she is an auspicious mother. So while she loves us like a mother, she is slightly different from that in that she is an auspicious mother. So what does that mean? A human mother, while she loves her children and cares for them, is not capable of removing their pain, sorrow, and sufferings. Whereas Lalita is different from a normal mother in that context, that just like a normal mother, she loves us, but she's also capable of removing our pain, sorrow, and sufferings. So in that, she is different from a regular mother. That's why it's not just Mata, it's Shri Mata. The second thing about a Shri Mata is that when a normal mother delivers her baby, from that point on, the mother and the baby are two separate lives. There is always an emotional and psychological connection, that is true, but physically they are two separate living beings, meaning that it'll no longer work if the mother eats. The baby has to also consume the food. And it's not just that they're different physically, the biologically, the mental process, everything is different, right? So each one has their own thoughts, their likes, dislikes, their preferences, their needs. Those are all very different. Whereas Shri Mata, auspicious mother, Lalita is not just the creator, she is also the creation. So there is no difference between Lalita and what she has created. And so this actually refers to the first divine function, which is creation, and it also refers to the non-duality, which is the creator and the creation are one and the same. So in Advaita philosophy, Advaita means not two, non-dual. It is said that there is only one ultimate reality. That one ultimate reality manifested into everything in this universe. So the universe is a single reality. There is an interconnectedness across everything, and all the things in this universe are just a manifestation of that single reality. So this is what the Shri Mata refers to, the non-duality, the non-separation between Lalita and us. And that actually is the whole point of Lalita Sahasranamam. If we realize that Lalita and us are not different, then we get to liberation. So that is the whole point, and that's why it's being said in the very first nama. So let's talk a little bit about the Advaita and the process of creation. So in Advaita, there is one ultimate reality. That ultimate reality is both form and formless. And the very first step towards manifestation of that reality is that ultimate reality has two complementary aspects, and we call that Shiva and Shakti. So, if that ultimate reality has no form, then we call it Shiva, and if it has a form, then we call it Shakti. The ultimate reality is both form and formless, has both attributes and has no attributes, does not have any limitations, can be anywhere and everywhere all at once, and towards the process of manifestation, some limitations come into play. So, to better understand Shiva and Shakti, think of that as a seed and a tree, the relationship between seed and tree. So, a seed is really small, and even if you take a banyan tree that can become really big, there is a small seed that a banyan tree can grow out of, right? And then, but whereas the tree itself is really big, and it cannot be contained in one hand. So, the tree came from the seed, but where was that tree in the seed? Right? The seed was small, but the tree is so big. So, how did that tree reside in that seed? And if you think about it, all of us know that the tree was a potential within that seed. Right? The seed was the container, and the tree was a potential within that seed. When it had all the right conditions, it became a sprout, and then from there became a plant, and then became a big tree. So, Shiva is the seed, the container, and it's contained at that point. The potential is not manifested, but it exists. And then the Shakti is the creative potential within that seed. So that was inside that seed. And that's why Shiva and Shakti are inseparable. They are complementary aspects, they flow easily into each other. And other examples would be like water and wetness, or fire and heat. They're complementary aspects. One is not without the other. So that's a very first step in the creation. And there's something called Tattva map, where Shiva and Shakti are the first two complementary aspects. And as the descent of creation happens, one very important step in that is there is the wheel of separation, and it's called as Maya, illusion. And because of this Maya, when the ultimate reality manifests into certain forms, there is a sense of separation. There is a sense of not being one and the same. And to better understand this example, think of an actor, right? The actor is the same person, and the actor can play many roles. When that actor is actor or actress, when they are as themselves, they have lots of freedom. They can say what they want to say, they can dress the way they want to dress, they can eat what they want to eat, they can decide to look however they want to look. Now, when that actor takes on a role, the role has certain limitations, right? So the person can only dress in a certain way, whatever the script demands. That's how the person behaves, that's how the person dresses, that's how this person acts. And sometimes the actors may even have some limitations in terms of whether they have to reduce weight or whether they have to increase weight in order to fit to that particular role and the look that they have to sport. So the actor is the ultimate reality, consider that way, and then the role is the manifested. So automatically, when the divine manifests, it gets subject to a name, a form, certain attributes, certain behaviors, which is actually each one of us. And the act of Maya is causing a situation where the actor forgets that they are actually doing a role and they start to live just in that role. So the actor has forgotten who they are and now has only taken on the identity of that particular role. This is the effect of Maya. And because of the effect of Maya, we all have this, we've forgotten who we are, we've forgotten our divine nature. And therefore, we start to assume our own identity. That's called as ahankara. Aham karam, orientation towards I. And that identity could be because of, based on which family we come from, or what we have studied, or what we do for our work, or it could be based on certain specialities that we have, right? So those are all identities, and that's how we all pursue our life. And when we drop that ahankara, the wheel of Maya begins to lift, and through sadhana, when we completely pierce the Maya, we are able to see our own divine nature, and at that point it's called realization. So the Sri Mata is the reference towards that non-duality, and it is the primary purpose of Lalita Sahasranama to help us realize our own divine nature. So the next one is Sri Maharagni. Ragni means queen. Maharagni means great queen. So auspicious great queen. So the first divine function was creation, and anything that is created has to be maintained, and that's why she is referred to as the queen. So the very important job of a ruler is to ensure prosperity for their kingdom, to ensure order for their kingdom, and that is the role here, which is the second divine function called maintenance or sustenance. It's called sthiti. The creation is called srishti. That is the first divine function, which is characterized by Sri Mata. And the second divine function is sthiti, paripalanam, as it is called, means taking care of. Paripalanam means taking care of. So that is the ruler's function. And also, if you look at the story wise, when Lalita came to help the Devas, they hailed her as their queen, and they built a city for her called Sri Puram or Sri Nagaram, and she is the queen of that particular city. So in the text, that's how, the story, that's how they reference it. So Sri Maharagni means auspicious great queen. And there is another secret in here, the word Maha. Again, this emphasizes the point of Lalita Sahasranamam. So Maha means great. Ma-ha. Now if you read that in the reverse order, it is A-ha-ma, which is aham. What it says is that, so Maha is great. Who is great? Lalita is great. And if you reverse that, it is aham, and which is I. What this tries to signify is that great Lalita and I are one and the same. That's what this is trying to tell you. Maha, when read from front to back, is Maha. When you read it back to front, is aham. And this is telling you that that great Lalita and us are one and the same. Again, it is a pointer to us having that divine in us. We've just forgotten about it, and it is a pointer to realizing that divine in us. So that is again a secret here. Sri Maharagi. Srimad Simhasaneshwari. Simha Asana Ishwari. Simha means lion, Asanam means seat. So Srimad Simhasaneshwari is one who's seated on the lion throne. Simhasanam is the throne. So when we said in Paripalanam or Sri Maharagni, as a ruler, it's her responsibility to ensure that her kingdom is being taken care of. There is well-being, there is order, there is protection, all of those, right? And one of the very important pieces of ensuring that order is ensuring that justice is fairly served. So, Simhasaneshwari is the queen seated on a throne delivers justice. And how do you deliver justice? By destroying anything that is evil. So that's why the Simha is represented. The lion represents power. The lion represents fierceness, and it says how she would go after uh, the evil, right? So Srimad Simhasaneshwari references the third divine function, which is the Samharam. It's destruction of evil. And there is also another way to look at it, which is dissolution, and which is the act of keeping time. So if you think about the world itself, we measure this world in terms of time, right? In terms of time. So one moment has to dissolve in order for the next moment to be born. And so if you're responsible for creation, then dissolution automatically becomes a part of it. So it is that's how the world goes around. So it is also the time that is referenced there. So far we saw Srishti, Sthiti and Samharam. Next nama is Chidagnikunda Sambhuta. That means born in the fire pit of consciousness. Chit is consciousness, Agnikundam is fire pit, Sambhuta means born. So first let's take a look at the story in the Lalita Sahasranam story, how Lalita originated. Just a quick recap is that the Devas were really being tortured by Bandasura, and they were seeking some help, and so they started to do a big yajna, a sacrifice, and they were praying and praying, and it became a long time, and they weren't getting any remedy. At that point, the Devas decided to do what is a supreme sacrifice, which is them jumping directly into that fire. And when they decided to jump into that fire, at that time, Lalita came out of that fire. So that is the story aspect of it. So one who came out of the fire pit. But there is a deeper meaning, and this is the lifting of the Maya for us. That's what this deeper meaning refers to. So if you look at it, when did Lalita come in the story? When the Devas were willing to give up themselves. At that time, Lalita came. Similarly, if we give up our identity, which is the ahamkara, then Lalita will rise in our consciousness. That's what this means. And this refers to the fourth divine function, which is called Tirodhanam. Tirodhanam means concealment or revealing as well. So it is the wheel of Maya being pierced. And that will happen only when each one of us let go of our ahankaram, the orientation towards I. And again, in the initial part, we saw that, right? Each one of us is a manifestation of that divinity, right? Sometimes it can feel kind of odd to hear that, but each one of us is that actor who has forgotten that he or she is the actor or actress and has assumed the identity of the role, right? So when we realize that that divine resides in our heart, our ahankara will slip away. So, or in order for ahankara to slip away, we have to realize that the divine resides in our heart. At that point, we are able to reach Lalita. So this is the fourth divine function. And in some ways, if you look at the story also, think of Bandasura, right? Bandasura was actually, he came from the ashes of Manmata. So when they tried to wake up Shiva from his long meditation because they needed some help with the Tarakasura, they took the help of Manmata, and their idea was that Manmata could put his floral arrow which is capable of causing desire and love and lust. And then there was Parvati around, and the idea was that Shiva would wake up and he would see Parvati, he would fall in love with her, and then they can have a baby, which then can go and uh, destroy Tarakasura, because he can only be killed by an son of Shiva or Shiva. That was his boon. So that was the whole idea. Of course, the whole idea backfired, and even though Shiva woke up, he got very upset with Manmata for disturbing his penance, and he burnt him down to ashes. And Bandasura came from those ashes. And after a while, Shiva realized that, this whole idea was not Manmata's, and he was just helping, and he was feeling sympathetic and generous. And that's when the ashes became a boy who became Bandasura. And Shiva told Bandasura that he can rule for 60,000 years. But look at Bandasura. He rose from the ashes of Manmata, and Manmata is the god of creation, right? Without love and desire, there is nothing. So this world will come to a stop if there is no Manmata. So Manmata is a very important part of the creation. The process of creation requires Manmata. So he is auspicious. Yet, when he was burned down and he rose as ashes, he rose from the ashes into a Bandasura, he forgot his own divine nature. And what happened? Lalita had to come with her Shakti Sena in order to kill Bandasura and revive Manmata. And that is also another thing that the story tells us. Lalita reveals our own divine nature. When we seek her help, she reveals to us our own divine nature. The last nama in this shloka is Deva Karya Samudyata. So Deva Karya is the Deva's work. And what was Deva's work? It was to end their suffering because of this Bandasura. Deva Karya Samudyata. Samudyata means coming forward or raised or rised. So Samudyata. So basically she is the facilitator of the Deva's work. And this is the last divine function, which is called as Anugraha, which is blessing. So when the Devas gave up themselves in the fire pit, then Lalita came, and what did she bless them with? She got rid of their sufferings. Similarly, when we let go of our ahankara, then Lalita will rise in our consciousness and she will get rid of our sufferings. And how is that so? Because today, a lot of our own suffering is caused by our mind, right? It is what we expect to happen, and whatever happens, if they don't match, then it creates stress and suffering for us. The moment we detach ourselves from the identity we have created for ourselves, or the lens with which we see this world, then our mind becomes less clouded. A mind that is less clouded can start to see things more clearly. And when we see things more clearly, then we are able to take a step back and disattach ourselves or detach ourselves from everything that's happening and have a sense of judgment. And the moment we are a bit detached from the things that are happening and don't get too involved, then there is no more suffering. What we want changes, and because what we want changes, we are able to better accept what happens. And when we accept what happens, there is no suffering. So we can look at it in the terms of the story, or we can look at it in terms of how life unfolds. But the key idea here is when we surrender to Lalita and seek her help, she bestows all the abundance and prosperity that is needed for us to live in this world. And at the same time, she helps uncloud our mind and get to a place where we are not having any suffering. So in summary, three things about this particular shloka. There is the Shrim Bijaksharam that is embedded in the first line, Shri Mata, Shri Maharagni, Shrimat Simhasaneshwari. As you're pronouncing, you're saying Shreem, 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 although you can look at it as Sri Mata, but when we say it, it'll be Sri Mata. So we are saying that Shreem. The second secret here is the Maha and Aham. That is the point of Lalita Sahasranama, us realizing our divine nature, us realizing that Lalita and us are one and the same, or us realizing that Lalita residing in our heart. So that is the second one. And then the entire shloka refers to the 5 divine functions, which is Srishti, creation, Sthiti, sustenance or maintenance, Samharam, which is destruction or dissolution, and Tirodhanam, which is concealment and revealing, and Anugraha, which is blessing. Thank you.